Good morning, beautiful people of the internet, and we are back again. We are obviously lacking the presence of Mr. Ross Harper, who is no doubt doing something fantastic enough to tear him apart, tear him away from our presence, essentially. And he does like a bit of a chat, but he's obviously very important, but we're clearly not important enough. So we'll go on to the second most important person on the call, which is clearly Helen. Helen's here, star of Silver Screen and Stage. If you can't find her on Sky's property TV channel, you will find her at an exhibition centre where they are talking about how to do deals and how to structure deals and how to do due diligence and always focusing on the numbers. That's important. Then have Piotr Rusnek, who is our grounded, central, mage-like person in the group, always brings a second kind of aspect to things, probably a little bit more spiritual. Then, of course, there's me, and we're saving the best for last, which is Adam, who has done his superfluous, spectacular, splendiferous Sunday special. And this one is brilliant. It starts off with melting the brain from start to finish, and it finishes on such a brilliant point. So we're going to get Adam to go through the cliff notes, and then from the cliff notes we're going to be focusing on the second to last paragraph of the Sunday supplement. So if you haven't read it, you can now start ignoring Adam for the next 20 minutes, read it through, get to the second to last paragraph, so you can start asking questions about that segment there. Adam, take it away.
Nice. And I posted the link to the whole article in the comments, so people can go straight to it.
Thanks, Piotr. Appreciate that. So great lead in. Can only disappoint from here. I'll keep it down to 19 minutes though, just for you guys. So actually shortened the format a little bit today, which most people have appreciated without saying it, I think. So it was a bit more of a slugfest where I just slammed you with points every paragraph, really. Which maybe saves a few minutes for a few discerning people. Tried to cut the guff for once. So we went into the economy and where we've got to this week. So a couple of big bits of news from the US. One being the massive contraction of 0.1% of the economy in the first quarter. But of course, that is halfway towards a recession. So that's provided the clickbaiters and the clueless with lots of stuff to talk about. In seriousness, it's also provided the Federal Reserve with quite a lot to think about. And there's a number of different things playing out at the moment, political and economic, that will be very relevant over the next few months. And I think there's probably 3 or 4 scenarios that I will outline, but I'm going to do that next week rather than now. Because I'm still forming in my head just how cynical I'm feeling with what probability of which event happening. But you know the answer is going to be pretty cynical, so it'll takes a few days to percolate. That's all. So that's the first one, and then the second one. By the way, I don't think there's going to be a recession in the US with a contraction in quarter 2. I'm sort of 90% that's not happening. 10% it is at the moment, roughly. So. We'll see. The other one is Amazon took a fall from grace that is something for a mega cap like them to do 14% down on Friday. 1.4. That's big. It's still worth 1.25 trillion, but couple of 100 billion off the market cap. Yeah, couple of 100 billion. Not as big a percentage fall as Netflix, but of course much bigger company. What's the basic Occam's razor 419 explanation of that? Pandemic made them look better than they are, realistically, and some of these growth figures that are baked in could never be kept up with when we return to anything that looked like normal life. If you bake in the inflation and the effect it's having on people sharpening their household budgets, let's put 2 and 2 together here. Netflix subscriber cancellations, Amazon not doing as much revenue as you thought. This is fairly ABC given the stuff we've been going on about for the last year, right? But it's now coming home to roost. I said in the supplement today, I reckon there's a few hedge funds who might have nicked a couple of quid on that 14% day. But ultimately, it boils down to worst month for the Nasdaq since October 2008. You might remember that one. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal. So nearly 14 years ago, but pretty painful. Obviously, the DAC has had bigger problems than that. You might remember 99, 2000 and the .com. We're not at that sort of level, but it does seem that tech's bull run might have at least hit the buffers or the sidings a little bit, let's say. I'm not saying it's all over. Is this why Mr. Musk has diversified into Twitter? I don't think so. I think he's just having a bit of a play around, really. But that's my view. He's a nut job, and he's quite happy to be a nut job. Brilliant man, massive nut job. I think it's just a big toy. When you're ridiculously wealthy, it's like I fancy poking. You know, it's only a tenth of my net worth into a social media platform where I can now call someone a pedo whenever I want, rather than having to apologise for it. But that's free speech for you, right? Let's face it. So I'm not as anti-Elon as some others, although I did make me laugh some time ago when I saw him described as Felon Musk by some people who believe that the Tesla valuation is ridiculous. That did make me chuckle. So that was the macro piece, and then for the micro, we went into windfalls and talked about as a boring MBA style definition of a windfall, you know, a disproportionate amount of cash being bequeathed upon you either in a very big hurry or on a semi-regular basis, because perhaps you're a trader who gets a nice fat bonus every year, or you knew there was an inheritance coming, or you were looking forward to your tax-free lump sum from your pension, or you were selling your business and you knew it was coming at some point. So a windfall, how it affects you psychologically, what you do with it, how you deploy it, some of the mindset around that. And really, it made me reflect at the end that although there are two fine people on this call who studied at the single finest educational institution that the universe has ever seen, in the greatest subjects of them all, philosophy, politics, and economics, the very single greatest, I don't remember us, Helen, ever discussing investment philosophy, but I actually think it could be the most important philosophy of them all. What do you reckon?
Oh, yeah, not even mentioned. To be fair, when I was there, and I was a few years ahead of you, modern British politics went up to, we stopped at Major. Oh, did we stop at Thatcher? I don't know, but it was, yeah. So, yeah, there was no Said Business School or any touch on investment, which would have been, yeah.
That's very true. Very true, really, yes.
Really interesting.
Yeah, they haven't built the business school, had they? No. Wow. Newcomers to the throne. But so we went through some investment philosophy, and that's why I'm not Kiyosaki's biggest fan in the world. I think at a very high level, Rich Dad Poor Dad introduces some really important context and a few important things to just get you thinking apart from anything else. Yeah. The rest of what he's done I consider to be somewhere between hogwash and drivel, generally speaking. But it has created a path for many, many millions of people, which I've definitely never done and probably will never do. So that needs the appropriate amount of respect. I just don't think the man's much of an economist at the end of the day. But if he even tries to be, but he certainly positions himself as such. But that whole, one of the great misquotes of all time, the rich people buy assets, poor and middle class people buy liabilities that they think are assets. And then there was a fantastic comment from one of the Partners in Property members, who's a regular reader of the supplement, who said, this is one of the strange things about when you're an influencer and you want to post, you lying on the Ferrari or whatever the appropriate picture is for the week. And generally speaking, well, Ferrari might not be a great example because it might be an asset rather than a liability. But generally speaking, spending it all on, wine, fast cars and women and wasting the rest is not really buying assets. Let's face it, it's probably racking up very significant liabilities, including divorce settlements, apart from anything else. But enough about that. That's a bit too topical at the moment for a few people.
Yeah, there's so many developers springing to mind right now as you go through that list.
I was about to say, luckily I did that when I was in my early 20s, so I got that out of my system.
I'm not sure it's a one-time thing, but anyway, I know that you're very, very solid union of wonderful people. When she hacked your Facebook account the other week, it was one of the funniest things I've read for many a long time. So
it's absolutely beautiful. Like she, yeah. That's love at the end of the day. Just,
Absolutely. But Jay said it himself, and I'm glad that he singled that bit out. When we get towards the end, because I talk a bit about what you need to think about when you've got a windfall, your expectations, being realistic. Remember, look, Uncle Warren is all over this. You know, when the sad day comes and the greatest
with melting.
Just overlaying the backing tracks, Piotr. I see. When the sad day comes and Uncle Warren does leave this planet and is finally enshrined as the single greatest investor ever to walk the earth, there's a few things that people will need to remember. And there's a cracking double today with timing the market, not timing the market, and return of investment before return on investment. I mean, two absolutely critical pieces, and solid reactions. But it ultimately all leads into the people that you put around you, and you can kind of take that as far as you like. You can take that as the 4, sometimes 5, when it can be bothered to turn up. People who come on this call every Sunday. You can take that to the Auction Buyers Club or the Property Sisters or Partners in Property. You can take that to a personal level, and the people you put around you by choice, not necessarily your family, but your chosen family, let's say. You can take that to the books that you read, the company that you keep, the people who you allow to influence you. And I say that very deliberately, because ultimately, if you are not in control of that and you don't understand, I mean, we had a fantastic conversation yesterday about a particularly litigious property trainer who we may or may not have mentioned before on here, because we ran a social housing event and we had a lunch beforehand and we had the event. It was all fabulous. And we were talking about neuro-linguistic programming. And I was letting a couple of the assembled company understand some of the basics of NLP and why it's a good idea to try and understand it. And like a lot of things in life, you can't necessarily, we're all using NLP when we're speaking, right? Let's be very clear about that. We might not be trained practitioners. We might not be all of that stuff. So like anything, it's the ethics with which you use it rather than whether it exists or not, or whether it's a thing or not. You know, it's a very detailed field that drives some academics absolutely nuts, because in the same way that Malcolm Gladwell drives some people nuts because they hate the idea of the 10,000 hour rule and it isn't 100% academically robust and all the rest of it. But they miss the point. You know, the point is it's meaningful. It makes you think. There is evidence base behind it. It might not be blind tested and down to the nth degree. You might be able to do it in 9,000 hours, or it might take you 11,462 hours. That's not the point of the exercise, right? And one of the NLP things we talked about yesterday was when someone's going through. So two things really. Some events, you know, will start at 3:45 a.m. and they'll go on till midnight, so that you get tired and you get more suggestible. And all the way through, they're dropping those snippets in, usually something like, by now, you will have realized that I'm rambling on about a load of stuff. By now, etc. And they'll say by 75 times, because what they want you to do is buy now, as soon as their shills stand up and get you to run to the back of the room. So there's a great spectrum there of people you would want to put around you and people you would not want to put around you. And I think it's really important to say that is an individual and bespoke thing. There are a few self-appointed sheriffs in the property world. I would like to consider myself not to be one of them. The ones who do it as a business, and there are people who do it as their business, I'm not a big fan of, if I'm honest, because there's too much self-interest in stirring pots that don't necessarily deserve to be stirred, or putting in the koi carp with the piranha, which is not ideal. But that's my personal view, and everybody, I think, should be welcome to speak as they find, and it's difficult to do. And your good people might not be my good people for a whole number of reasons, you know.
Yeah.
They might
good
like
people for one thing might not be good people for, like, in general, investing or doing some other things.
Yeah, or even beyond that, you know. So your circle, but I think the key is you take ownership of that and you understand who you're listening to and why, and then you understand what their agendas might be or might not be, and if appropriate, you take them as close to you as you want to. You listen to them, you read their stuff, make sure you get a broad range of opinions, and I'd always say that to everybody. And a lot of people, I'm sure you guys will probably identify with this. Your network doesn't stay the same as you go throughout your life, because when you make different choices and you have a different mindset. I mean, my absolute favorite example of this was last week. I went to speak as a guest speaker for Kevin Wright, who I know Jay has spoken for a number of times. I like Kevin. I think he's a straightforward guy and he's doing some good stuff. Yes, he does property training, but I'm not against all trainers, just ones who sound like fashion designers or their name tells you what they're trying to do to people and well, okay, I'm going to stop there before I get myself in trouble. And so,
well, I mean, to bury you out, Adam, if you want, one of my uncles told me that you've got three types of people in your life. So he called them it's the hierarchy of friends. It's not really a hierarchy. What it is it's you've got a friend for a season, a friend for a reason, and a friend for life. And it's an ever decreasing circle. So depending on what's going on in your life at some point, you know, maybe you're at school, you're at high school. That's the reason why you have that group of friends. They don't always go through to a season. So a season maybe you're doing a joint venture with someone and it's a 24-month development and it's a seasonal thing that's not for life, maybe. And then you have those friends that are for life, which, you know, he said you could count on one hand, depending on how many fingers you have. But you can count on one hand, normally 4 or 5 people. But he used to say that, and he said, look, the other thing you have to remember is that, you know, if you have an overlap, let's say you've got 4 or 5 people in your life, and like, these are my 5 people. And then you can see that they're connected with another 5 or 6 people, and you've got the 6 degrees of separation. You go, okay, well, that person's not my cup of tea. Well, you don't. The other thing is, like, it's what's required at the time, right? And it's the same for different people. But there's normally like a good overlap. Like there's the 5 of us when Ross is here, and then there's other people that are connected to the 5 of us where you know we get on, and then maybe there's some that aren't, and it kind of extrapolates out from there. But he also used to say another thing. It's definitely not his quote. But he said the other thing is, you know, you've got to be careful of people because you know people have opinions. And he said, you know, and opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one. And it made me I just had to put a swear word in there somewhere. We've gone too far into the
course you did.
But it also made me think, like, when I was younger, I was quite combative, probably more linguistically combative rather than I was physically combative.
Well, the pen is mightier than the sword, mate. Come on.
That's indeed, yes. And my pen had a rappiest wit, I promise you. So but
it's more your sword I was worried about, but maybe we should leave that one there.
At least before the watershed, Adam. Come on.
If you want to lower the tone, I can lower it all day, Jay. You know that.
If it's a competition, I think we should do that one. I'll enjoy that.
We shouldn't do that now, to be clear. Probably shouldn't do that now.
I've completely lost my plot. I have no idea what I was
Sorry.
No. So yes, I was probably more linguistically combative, and I found myself losing friends or acquaintances, and I did the 3 spheres, 3 circles of, you know, reason, season, life. And I went back to him and he said, well, he goes, the problem is you're reacting too harshly to opinions that people have. And people are allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to have opinions. You have to kind of divide opinions between an opinion that you can understand. You can go, okay, I get the merits of that. That's not where I'm at, but it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt anyone else. It's not harming you. You can let that stuff lie. And then there's the ones that you categorically cannot live with. There are some, no matter how hard you try, you just cannot abide by. And I think you can even bring the opinion down to people's actions, people's attitudes, the way they treat other people. I'm trying to segue into your penultimate paragraph, and you kind of segue into things like that, and I think that's important because there's so much. I think there's so much in society. This is going to go into a proper rabbit warren.
Peterson is about 2 minutes away. Peterson is on his helicopter circling this conversation. He's 2 minutes away. He's coming
shut
down.
my internet off.
Here he comes. Here he comes.
The thing is, like in society today, there is so much noise created to be divisive, to separate people. You've got the men are violent, and women should be afraid of them. And then you've got on the other side, don't get married and have children because a woman has you in her clutches and she can take the house, the child, and everything. But there's too much to separate. Then you have the black and the white, too much to separate. Then you have the race and the religion. There's people talking about ages. Then you've got the pronouns. You've got all of these things designed to break down, separate, segregate. And these are things that people are against. People are like, no, we want inclusion, we want this. Well, then why are you separating it out? And it's only because you were talking about neuro-linguistic programming and language. It's out there in everything. It's not just an attack on the BBC. It's everywhere.
I think it's a really, really good point because I strongly believe that a lot of that is so popular because it's quite binary, so it's quite easy to understand. Now, utter nonsense, right? And it's turning problems that are multi-generational, multifaceted, complex problems into, well, that's because you're a bloke, or that's because you're whatever, and it's just nonsense. It's never going to be the answer. But because someone can read that and without even thinking about it, go, yeah, that must be why. There's this horrible survey that came out the other day that said something like 27% of people believe everything they read on Facebook. Now, if you just break that down, I hope they read the question properly, because believe everything Facebook. Let's just bring those three together. I mean, it's so scary. But even if it's 7%, it's still pretty bloody scary, isn't it? And unfortunately, that's what in the world of, there's not really, or I'm not aware of any field of literature or academia that's particularly covering content overload. I mean, there's been bits and bobs that I've read about it, but I mean actual meaningful surveys and long-term intergenerational studies around this. But it just stands to reason that, look, all our attention spans get hollowed out because we have more things to distract us. We have more content in our face, in the palms of our hands, and less time to read it. So, of course, we are then much more inclined to believe it because we're not thinking about it in any sort of depth. We're thinking about it very briefly. And then sometimes I'll catch myself thinking, right, why did I just say that? Right, I said that, and I'll backtrack it because 2 days ago, one person said that to me. Is that an evidence-based situation, or is that an anecdote?
Your mind will normally back up into heuristics, right? So what it will do is, if you're having that overload, it is going to create shortcuts, and it's going to go, right, I'm in the middle of this conversation. Where can I go in my random accessible memory here? That, okay, I'm going to pull that out, and it's shortcuts. Especially if you've taken a lot of information, you're doing a lot of study, and you're paying attention to data and stuff like that. Your mind will automatically use heuristics as a shortcut.
Absolutely,
and that can be equally as dangerous as taking your time with something.
Yeah.
So if people are listening and thinking, right, what steps do you guys take in order to make sure you try and put the right people around you? I love the reason, season, life, and there's some organic wastage, and there's some people around who just aren't on the same. They haven't got the same philosophy on life as you do, and they're probably best removed from if they get particularly negative or toxic or whatever. But what steps do you guys take in order to try and put the right people around you?
I think for us, it's like, I mean, for me as well, it's all about the kind of long-term vision. Like, I like to have people around me that have similar visions and similar even ways of working, because it's like those ways of working are quite how do you say it, important how you make decisions. So if you have a certain way of working, then you will make certain decisions. And I want to make sure that we have people around us that basically guide us in a similar way that probably we would do certain things, but they see things from different like context, points of views, and that's super important. Um, and I think like for us as well, it's sometimes the right people just kind of show up if you say no, or you just kind of what are not right people to be around you, and then kind of the right people just stay, because naturally it's like they're just filtered through, not hanging around or
So
listening to.
you're creating an environment whereby a lot of the hard yards is kind of done for you.
Yeah,
That's a handy tip, I think, isn't it, really, for
yeah,
people?
yeah. I think it's all about, like for us, it's all about creating environments, because uh, choosing, like making decisions on a daily basis, if you're not in there, if you don't have the right environment around you, it's like one super time consuming, and also super like energy consuming. So with the right environment, you're able to make better decisions with kind of ease, and the kind of like effortless, but they're not really effortless as long as the work goes into creating the environment.
And we share quite a bit. So when we're talking to people, it's a very open.
Yeah.
It's not really divisive. It just we share, and then what comes from that is it's kind of like Piotr said. It's like a colander effect. You know, the pasta will stop and the water will pass through, and it's the pasta that you want, right? It's the ones that stay afterwards, because it's either people understand what we do and they want to be a part of it, and they in one way, shape, or another, and we got quite an ecosystem, so there's multiple different ways to get involved, and in any real respect. But what it's really good at is it's really good at just people who don't get us move. They go through the holes themselves. It's a quick exit.
Yeah.
So we've talked before about. I want to let Helen speak, but we've talked before a little bit about a mutual friend of ours, who he calls it the cheese. Right, he puts the cheese out because if they're a rat, they can't avoid taking the cheese. Yeah, and as time goes on, the bits of cheese get bigger and bigger until you've been tested without calling it that 10 times. You know, I'm pretty sure I couldn't get through the whole of the average colander though, so I reckon I'm okay. Jay,
I think he did just call us orecchietti or ravioli or something.
He's swearing in Italian now. He's gone back up market. Fine.
When my grandfather first came to this country, he didn't know the word for colander. So he was trying to explain it to my grandmother, who didn't speak much Italian, and he was like, "Macaroni stop, water pass through," and that's kind of the thing. Like it's what's going to stay, because people who stay are going to stay, and it's not and like you mentioned before, it's not until you make decisions that change your trajectory, or until they make decisions that change their trajectory. Now, if you're lucky, those decisions and those trajectories are going to fly right, and that's how you get the friend for life. But some of them are going to be seasonal or reasonable or unreasonable, whichever way they may be. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I think it took me a while, because to kind of get to the point where someone leaving because they were there for a reason or a season doesn't hurt anymore. It's now natural. One of my uncles said, look, if you love something, you got to let it go. Like, there's no point keeping the butterfly in the jar. It'll just die quicker. Right. And it's kind of, now that just kind of goes, and it's what you kind of, without being cheesy, you kind of just let someone else go on their journey and hope that you've enriched them as they've enriched you for that period of time.
Goat's cheesy, or just cheesy, to be clear? Goat cheese.
Oh, there's I'm writing there's a whole new, like, how dating is like choosing people and investment in this chat. But what I'm hearing, like you and Piotr say, and I try and do it as well, is be clear about who you are, what works for you, and you have to know that won't resonate with some people, but it will resonate with the people that you want around you. And certainly in the past, and I think I'm getting much better at it, but you know, have had kind of phases of people pleasing. You try to be everything to all people. And that's just a recipe for burnout. Been there, done that one. And also, yeah, just attracting the wrong sort. I think I do it much more well. Maybe I'm just better at it in my working life than I am in dating. But I just now have all these filters, and people have to pass all these filters. Even in my bio, my dating bio, I've got a specific word that everybody in the world, I think except Jay, would have to go and look up. And even when you go and Google search it, you have to get to page 5 of the Google search before you can find it.
Any prospective Helen Chorley suitors, you heard it here first. That was it. Google search, page 5. Get stuck in there.
Wow, I'm just curious now. What's the word?
Well, you can't. If she says, she'll have to change it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That took a long time to find.
But
so I can't.
I think, Helen, my impression from, I mean, obviously I know you anyway, but from the social media face of Helen Chorley is that you are consistent, you are authentic, and your posts are filled with the right. It's not like me where I just go on for too long. You're filled with the right amount of content to make you think and go away, and that probably does 90% of attracting the right people. And the other 10%, you can just block them fairly quickly, I'd imagine. Or I always look at it like there's a good analogy, not quite as good as the macaroni and the colander, I don't think, but it's about poker. And it says, you know, everybody can sit at the table with the same amount of chips. I could give you a pep talk beforehand and you could all follow my instructions, but there would be a fixed amount of time by which you could follow those instructions. And the average is actually about half an hour in a poker game before people start playing how they actually want to play, and it's just gone all over the place. And that's very similar to interaction with people, especially when, I mean, for the dating profile stuff, I think the Google sheet might put a few people off, Helen, so you might want to rethink that one. But the investment questionnaire is a little bit wordy, but nonetheless, but people will generally, especially in every interaction, you know, because business is like dating. We've said it before, haven't we? You know, they reveal themselves relatively quickly, luckily. And when you get good at it, it's half an hour, and then it's a bit shorter and a bit shorter. And then when you've got lots and lots of people and opportunities for conversations and opportunities for businesses, you then start having to make those decisions faster and faster. And then this is how we get to the world where, you know, people have made their mind up in the first 30 seconds, you know. There's a few things I do very deliberately because I want people to write me off in the first 30 seconds because I only want to talk to people who don't write people off in the first 30 seconds. But then I'm difficult. So I'm a game theorist, right? I'm difficult. So I prefer to look up this word on page 5 of Google or whatever. But
I think that's brilliant, right? Because one of the other things that I guess we see is when we're talking to people, the shorter the conversation, the better, because we know immediately whether they're on our level or they're not, or whether they can get to not our level. Isn't like we're up here and they're down here. It's kind of like is the vibration, is the energy on the right level. You can always tell when it is and when it isn't. That stuff's the easier bit, but it's so much quicker, cleaner, and easier if you're honest and you can see that they're honest and you go, okay, this isn't going to work, right? Or it is going to work. And, you know, that's important. That's really important because you can waste so much time.
It reminds me of, it's either a series or a film, and someone invents this dating product where they can almost like see inside your head, and then they match people up with people they've never met before, and they've got this incredibly good record of finding people who will work well together.
It's a really cool film, and they make a mistake once, don't they? And they put this old guy and this young guy together, and then you're the one that's the one, and then it all falls to pieces. Yeah, it's kind of like a Black Mirror kind of.
Yeah, it's called something like that, isn't it? It's called The One or something like that. Yeah. Brilliant.
Nice.
Ooh, I want to invest in that company.
We're now distracting Helen on her phone. There's been about 500 new connections on her dating profile, trying to find out what this fucking word is.
Yeah, good comment from Dominic saying that basically everyone should just rely on their own judgments of personality. Because why would you invest in a course or JV if you don't like or click with the person? Um, I think some of the things you should do, even if you don't like the person, don't click with it. But it's like a testing thing, right? It's almost like you don't get married, but you want to be outside of the comfort zone. Like
But I mean, I think the good thing to pick up on here is what Adam had said earlier in reference to the NLP, because sometimes you can lose track of the use your own judgment if you've been NLP'd out of sensibility. Because, but then you have to rely on not just the first 30 seconds. You've got the congruency of it all. So sometimes if your judgment is warped or manipulated in some negative impact way, then your judgment can be impaired, which is why sometimes it's good to kind of not just judge on that first instance, maybe talk to someone else who knows that person, maybe wait 3 days or have another conversation or whatever. Sometimes it's worthwhile doing that if you feel that you're not being hoodwinked essentially into liking somebody.
And then I think it goes back to what Helen said as well about basically knowing yourself and knowing what's right for you, what's not right for you, and then being able to notice when you're making a decision because of the environment or when you're making a decision because of what you need and who you are and what you kind of stand for in the world. So wise words.
It's one
Very,
of those
very wise
things,
words.
if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing, right?
Well, we threatened, Peterson's helicopter's been circling for a bit longer than expected. But if you go back to that seminal, certainly when he became well known in the UK after the Kathy Newman Channel 4 interview, the most fantastic point of that interview is when he explains that ultimately, in order to have a conversation, we need to be able to risk being offensive, because it's so true when you think about it. And he detailed her questioning has been quite offensive, but no problem, because she's doing her job. And and if we create a world where we're worrying about offending people, or let's be more accurate about it, a percentage of people are concerning themselves with offending people, it's just going to turn so bland and boring and rubbish. We need, I have people in my circle of influence, let's say, who I don't like them very much, right? I don't agree with the way that they think, but I really like to engage with them. Not every day, not every hour. I wouldn't want to go out to dinner with them, but they will stretch me. They will make me think differently. They will make me think, am I right about that? Do I need to rethink that? That's a point of view I have. And some of that obviously will offend me. Not that I'm a particularly snowflakey style character, but that offense I channel into a positive experience. It's a bit like going for a very aggressive massage. It might be worthwhile once a year, but you don't want to do it every morning necessarily. That's the way I look at it. I think those people have and hold their value, and they value those interactions to be bland, boring, and rubbish. We need. I have people those people have and hold their value, and they value those interactions.
It was worth repeating, apparently.
That's me again. I tried to respond to comments, but
I tell you what's really good with that as a position is when I was studying law, you always had to look at not what the ruling of the case was, but who the dissenting judge was. There's always a dissenting judge, right? Because even with us, we're quite a homogenous group insofar as there's a lot that we agree with. I don't think we really kind of we're not too far removed from positions that we all kind of agree on, even if we're in the same position, but we come at it from different sides. That's very valuable. But to understand the dissenter is a really kind of good, it's an opposing view. And it makes you really kind of stress test your own belief and feelings on things like, right, well, actually, that's quite cogently put. That makes a great deal of sense.
This is more, if you ever watch Peterson and Harris, and when they're debating God, and they do 2 or 3 incredible debates about theology and God in general, they both use that same structure. They steel man the opponent. They make the best case they can for the opposition, and then they talk about, so they don't straw man them, which is what most people do, and they say like, oh, that's pathetic. They even debate on a level that people, if you look at Boris Johnson debate, who is supposedly this fantastic debater, you probably put maybe a prefix before the word debater if you were going to describe Boris Johnson. But ultimately, he uses some pretty cheap, old school public school tactics in a lot of what he does to rubbish people. In this day and age, I don't think that's that cognitively clever. I mean, that's part of the problem of the House of Commons environment where you can watch porn apart from anything else. But, you know, they've still got a lot of bloody growing up to do. And that the last few weeks has really highlighted to me, when you listen to it and you hear the rah, 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 you just think, mate, the world doesn't work like that anymore. I don't know how long it's going to take the chamber to catch up. It might be 30 years, but it doesn't work like that anymore. So it works like that. We can have a robust debate. As long as we can put our feelings and our snowflakery to one side, we can have a very robust debate where we disagree and we can both leave with maybe a slightly different viewpoint and some more knowledge, and we can all be enriched by that experience. And that's why someone like Peterson will fill 5,000, 10,000, 25,000 person lecture theatres, because people they actively want that experience, and they're not getting it anywhere else. But you can get that experience if you work hard on your peer network and you have the kind of strategy that you guys have outlined today around the walled gardens and the colanders and the seagulls and the trawler and whatever else we've said, but it's very sensible to let 90% of it be done by your environment that you create, and then that other 10% is going to be down to you. Going back to Dominic's comment, I'm a big fan of people being 100% accountable for what they do. Now, that doesn't excuse the gurus who go around selling them utter bullshit, right? I'm not a fan of those people at all. But my point around being 100% accountable is that if that's all you take away from a bad experience, that I could have approached this differently, right? Yeah. To start with myself, what could I do differently? Someone in one of my businesses does something wrong. First question from me, what could I have done differently, right? And then we can go down to, do we need to change the process? Are they a bad actor? Are they demotivated? Those are secondary and tertiary questions. The primary question is, what could I have done differently? Why? Because that's the one thing I can, number one, control.
Yeah.
And I love feedback about what I could do differently from people who deliver it to me in a nice way or even in a harsh way. I enjoy that. And that probably is influenced by sort of Ray Dalio kind of framework of radical transparency and stuff like that, which I know there's going to be some nodding heads on this call about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Has anyone, this is a slight tangent, but has anyone seen a series on Netflix called Anatomy of a Scandal?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I was watching that last week. Oh my God.
The stuff about the watching porn in the Commons and all kind of, and I kind of thought, I've literally just finished watching this series, which couldn't be more, like, it felt so bloody real. Like,
yes.
It was just,
if you're watching this and you haven't watched it, like, be prepared for a roller coaster, because it's a good one.
Well, mate, I was in the Libertine, so I wasn't really. Obviously, would have never let me in.
No.
No, we can't deal with his level of debauchery. we have to maintain a standard.
You were the honorary president. What do you mean? It was you who blackballed me.
I was treasurer for 4 years.
Yeah, you definitely didn't have the right accent, Adam. Not for that. That is definitely based on somebody real, though. I'm sure of it.
I think it's like these things. It's a nice merge of a couple of people.
Yeah,
I think we probably know roughly, loosely who we're talking about. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
There were definitely some characters that had quite real resemblances.
Yes.
To modern day.
I believe the pigs and the trough came to mind a couple of times, and there were other. Yeah. And I'm proud to say I attended, as I said earlier, the intergalactically finest university of all time, and never once did I go to a party where even though it was in the 90s, women were treated like that. But then, like I said, that's probably because they kept me out of those scenarios. Anyway, not posh enough, as Helen said. Not posh enough.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Played rugby. Didn't play fives. I'm afraid, darling. Didn't play fives. Celebrate. No regrets. Have we got any more comments, Piotr? Or
there's a couple of just kind of following up on the previous things. This is from Dominic, as usual. A bit of humor from him. The early bird gets the worm, but a second mouse that gets the cheese. It's good, and Matt loves the session. That's
thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. If anyone else got comments, let us know, or questions, let us know, and yeah, we'll try to respond them and bring them up on the screen. But yeah, what else we're covering on this?
Well, anything else anybody fancies us talking about in future weeks, then I'm sure we'll be very happy to try and segue around all of that. As Jay's done a spectacular job of steering us today into many chasms and valleys of wonderfulness.
They all connect somewhere. It's within the system.
I love
the ecosystem of ecosystems. Yeah,
that's why we need that dating app that was in the film, so we can see inside Jade's mind and like.
No. Do not recommend.
We can go into his mind palace.
10 a.m. on Sunday morning, Helen. Are you sure? You sure?
Okay, yeah.
I suppose the internet's not regulated, is it? So it'll probably be okay, but I'm not sure.
Right, great stuff. Well, we'll have a chance to basically answer the questions after the show as well in the comments, and for next week's stuff, drop us a message, and we're always happy to take requests about what to talk about, because it's probably the best source of inspiration rather than us trying to come up with some subjects. I think we do enjoy when people suggest, like, this is a topic we'd like to discuss, or this is like something I'm struggling with. What do you guys think about this? So we can possibly be one of the 4 or 5 people around you that shares opinions on subjects, and then help you steer in the right direction. So,
and I think Piotr, there's maybe one thing we could ask anyone who's still watching, if they shared this with their 3, 4, 5 people who share the same values as them, we'd really appreciate the opportunity to grow our viewer base and find some more of those people to connect with, because it's great when someone who you already connected with as pre-qualified people, you can normally have some really meaningful conversations and interactions very, very quickly. So that's what the world's all about after today, right?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
If you guys think this could be valuable to someone and they might take some from it, just share it with them, send them the link, to Adam's supplement, and let's grow together. And there's a request from Fiona. Could you post the link in the comments, Helen?
I think she might find that a person less mature than me would then be setting up fake accounts and using the name of cleverly merged property gurus to troll Helen with dating messages whilst translating these difficult challenges. So it may or may not be a good idea, Helen. I'll leave that one with you. I promise not to.
I'll show you at the bar, Fiona, as it's you.
There you go. There's a deal.
Nice one. And one last comment from I Am Crypto on Property Sisters YouTube channel. And what's your opinion on how central banks and Fed the Fed especially, can raise rates between rock and hard place comes to mind?
Yeah, look, it's a really good one. I won't go into a full diatribe about it at this point, as we've pretty much wrapped. But how far can they raise things before a guaranteed recession? Well, bear in mind, if I'm right about this quarter not being negative, we've got at least 9 months before we get into an actual recession. In those 9 months, they're now expecting that rates could hit maybe even 3% with some of the plots that are going on. Can they get to 3 without breaking the US economy? Not sure. I don't think so. It's not in a better place than it was in 2016, 17, 18. And they got to what, 2.5, and they had to tap out. So there's a number of different things going on here. It's either, well, it's always a game, but some of it might be they put them up quite a long way in order to take them down because the economy does come down. Perhaps it's the only way they can think of to stop the runaway train of inflation. You know, I've talked in the supplement about that there's really two ways, productivity and recession. And productivity is a problem, and it has been for a while. Less of a problem in the US, but it's a problem on the back of the pandemic job market for a whole number of reasons. So they can go to 3. The Bank of England could go to 3. If they do, 100% sure in England that will break something, and probably 70% sure in the States that will break something and be quite bad. The problem you've got is there aren't really many government policies, fiscal policies, that can really stop this from happening. You've got to get monetary, and you've got to start giving money away, or, you know, what Rishi is tinkering with at the moment in the UK around, here's your council tax rebates, here's your loans on the energy bill. Well, that proclaims that the energy bills are going to go down, which I think is probably quite unlikely, I'm afraid to say. Maybe they will, but I'm struggling to see how that's going to happen at the moment. They might go up a lot more and then come back down, but I'm not sure they're going back down to where they were in 2020. Let's just leave it at that. So it could be as much of a bloodbath as they want to create, and I think they know what they're doing. They're not stupid, but yeah, the rock and the hard place is a pretty good analogy. But I'll throw one more thing in, which is a touch cynical. Do Jay Powell, do Andrew Bailey, do all of these other all the members of the FOMCs and all the rest of it? Do they want to keep their jobs? Because you've got a job with one KPI, and that KPI is inflation stays at 2. How's it going? Yeah, not ideal. So what will you sacrifice the economy to keep your job? Well, we talked about The Big Short last week. That's my favorite piece of revision for motivation and why things happen the way they do. I refer you to the aforementioned Big Short. You know what people will do when their backs are against the wall. So we're all going to lose the job, or we're going to hike the rates when we really shouldn't. Oh, well, let's hike the rates, is what I'm saying to you.
Brilliant. That is such a brilliant answer in such a short period of time. So
Bang, bang.
Bang bang, yes, and I guess you comment on those things in every week supplement, because there's always something on what affects those interest rates, what affects the
That's it.
economy moving in certain directions. So
I will expand next week on that, definitely, because there's quite a bit more to say. But yeah, absolutely.
Great. Out of curiosity, how do you choose the subjects of your supplements every week? Is it like do you have like a list of
Market
things you
chooses
cover,
them.
or-
He just responds.
I love that. That's much better than my answer. My answer was going to be, have you ever been to Vegas? Do you know the big...
What a great start.
Do you know the big 6 wheel where they spin the wheel around and it stops on one of them? I've got a load of topics and a big 6 wheel at home. I just spin the wheel every week.
Nice one.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I might have to build one now. And
Next
that.
to the pinball
It's
machine.
not true, but I could make one.
Like on a Friday, you need to like spin the wheel so everyone knows what's coming on Sunday. You like do like a pre-Sunday special.
So this would be much better than my current Sunday supplement teasers on a Saturday, wouldn't it? It's like, here we go. Here's the wheel. Oh yeah. Next time anybody sees a casino in receivership, which let's face it, you never do because they make a ton of money. But if you do, then I'm looking for a big 6. I'm now officially in the market for a big 6 wheel, folks. So if anybody can help with that, then please drop me a message.
Wheel of Fundamentals, and you can like get like.
I can see getting at least another 4 or 5 viewers on the back of such incredible marketing, Jay. That is so cool. I love it.
Nice one. Okay, well let's wrap it up, and we'll be back next week. Thank you guys for contributing and asking questions, and see you next week.
Looking forward to it already, guys.
See you later, everyone.